a little late today, 4:30 on the East Coast, 4:40 technically, right now. Late Thursday evening or early Thursday evening rip here on the East Coast. Mid-afternoon rip in Nashville, Tennessee, and an early afternoon rip if you're on the left coast here in the United States. Matt, do you believe that inflation is 3.2%?
No. Bullshit.
We'll dive into that.
I'm troubleshooting our stream right now.
What's going on with
it? It looks like we're live everywhere except Noster again.
Noster's failed. Everybody go home. No need to keep working on it.
So did they just release the latest? When they released the latest inflation numbers?
This morning, CPI came in at 3.2%. However, if you look at Logan, you saw that tweet we pulled up earlier with the meme, the Shaq and Kevin Hart meme. That's got the good data in it. Official numbers 3.2%, but then if you dive in to the details, food away from home was up 7.1%. Shelter inflation was up 7.7%. Transportation inflation was up 9%. And if you look at core CPI minus food, housing, and transportation and energy, it was only up 0.2%. So that is the narrative that the Fed and the BLS are running with. Inflation came in at 3.2%. Core inflation minus everything that your everyday American needs to purchase on a day-to-day basis is only 0.2%. So inflation is falling.
Such a fucking obvious lie. Like, who do they think they're kidding? I mean, you can lie about the data all you want to lie, but like at the end of the day, what people care about is their actual expenses, which continue to go up, and it's quite obvious.
Well, that's what I mean. We recorded the last trade a couple of hours ago. That's the one thing we dove in. Did you see that own of Jason Calacanis? Pull that up too, Logan. Like he was tweeting. He was tweeting like, so that's the really interesting thing here is that there is a subset of people who should have more critical thinking skills that are just going with the party lines, the data that's being fed to them. Jason Calacanis being one of them. So for anybody listening to the podcast and not watching, on the screen we have up a tweet that Jason sent out on August 3rd. People are complaining about the economy in some fields never been worse, with the lowest unemployment and largest jobs opening of our lifetimes. Inflation is moderate. You can get anything you want delivered to your house in 2 hours to 2 days. Consumers complain constantly. And then just a few days later, he tweeted this out: 3 bags of groceries, $350! Exclamation point, exclamation point. Some high-end items like locks, but my Lord, everything is $12 now. And so, again, like this is Jason Calacanis is an example of somebody.
Did you go into the comments though?
No.
I mean, there a bunch of I guess he's from SF.
Yeah.
A bunch of SF other people figured out which store he went to, like which grocery store, and like he went to, you know, the small boutique bougie above Whole Foods for that purchase order too that he was complaining about, just to add another layer of disconnect from the average person. He went to like the most expensive grocery store,
and I mean, and it proved to be a little bit too expensive for him. I mean, just anecdotally speaking, from my own grocery trips that I've taken, like it is blatantly obvious at the grocery store that things are insanely expensive.
Yeah, no, it's not. I don't think anyone needs proof. I mean, I think every single person listening to this has noticed that groceries have gone up in cost.
Yeah, but there is that subset of the population that is typically in Jason Calacanis's income bracket that really doesn't have to worry about trips to the grocery and how that impacts their disposable income. But I think that was a strong signal this week when that person, that archetype of a person, is beginning to recognize this. That's what it's like, oh, it's there. But that same archetype a person also believes the party line, the official CPI numbers, the official jobs numbers.
Right.
Yeah, there's a complete disconnect.
Yeah, like I said, the Jasons of the world and the size of their audience and the size of their influence makes me incredibly bullish on Bitcoin. It just reaffirms my belief that we've just been telling everyone exactly what our strategy is, which is just to stay humble and stack sats. And most people just still are completely unaware and not paying attention.
Yeah. Is it scary? I spoke with somebody earlier today that texted you and said, I'm feeling bullishness in the air. And you responded mandibles.
He didn't say he was feeling bullishness in the air.
What did he say?
He was saying his previous message was like basically that he was feeling mandibles in the air, but he's just in mandibles denial. One of our mandibles denial friends. He said shit's gonna get real soon. It's in the air. And then I responded back mandibles, which is appropriate.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw your recent bent was straight out of mandibles too.
The one from yesterday?
The one about trying to pierce the LLC privacy veil.
Yeah, did you include that in the list?
His money. No, didn't. It's a long list. But we can talk about it right now.
Yeah, I think we should. Logan, pull up the TFTC issue or the MartyBent issue from last night.
So it still needs to be approved, right?
No, it was signed into law in like 2018. It just goes into effect in 2024.
Someone I talked to today, like I brought it up, and she said that it still needs to get approved, but I don't fucking know.
So what we're talking about here, Matt McClintock from Bespoke, which is a wealth management firm that helps people spin up trust and manage their Bitcoin with them. I mean, he has been on the tail of this because he has to be. There's a lot of people hold LLCs within their trust. And so as of January 1st, 2024, the Corporate Transparency Act is going to go into effect. And once it goes into effect, maybe there is still hope that it can be prevented from going into effect. But it seems like as of right now, come January 1st next year, this will be a law. And once it becomes a law, anybody who owns an LLC, anybody who's an LLC member, will be forced to share personal identifiable information with FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network that operates under the Treasury. And so any LLC, which is a corporate structure that is used for tax reasons and privacy reasons, anybody who's a member of an LLC, whether you spin it up post January 1st, 2024, or before that, will have to send name, address, date of birth, social security number, or tax identifier number to FinCEN. And if you do not comply, you can be subject to a $250,000 fine or up to 10 years in prison. And like Matt said, mandibles. I mean, this is a strong signal that fiat system is in the last throes of This is what happens when governments become bloated, begin to lose control. They try to clamp down, and this is an egregious affront to privacy rights. And I think Matt, in that thread, Matt McClintock, it's a 20-tweet thread. Highly recommend you go read it. I mean, he made some good points. There's a lot of extremely wealthy people that have accrued their wealth, and they're not U.S. citizens, but they're able to utilize the LLC structure to protect their wealth and their privacy from people in their own countries. And it's about to pierce the veil on them. Obviously, you're sharing this information with FinCEN. It's not like it's a public database that people can go query, but FinCEN's going to have a list. The Treasury is going to have a list. And as we know, with governments and databases, they're typically not as secure as one would like them to be. And so this creates
Every
a map.
database is going to either get leaked, stolen, sold eventually.
Yeah. Matt McClintock in his thread references the Panama Papers and everything that led to in terms of people getting doxxed and their wealth getting doxxed.
Hate to see it. Not surprising. Expect more of this. And be aware.
Beware. Can we play a song? Have you heard this song yet? I know you've been busy all day. Have you seen this going around?
I don't know what we're talking about.
Look, go to my Twitter profile. One of my recent tweets. It's a song. It's 2 minutes and 20 seconds, but I do think it's actually a very powerful song.
Whatever you think is best, Marty.
I think you'll like it. You've been into bluegrass. It's got a little bluegrass tinge to it. So it's probably pure country over bluegrass.
Just make sure the volume is not too high.
Working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, so I can sit out here and waste my life away. Drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men, cause the rich men. I wish politicians would look out for minors, and not just minors on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. Well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. Lord, it's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do, and then
Yeah, so it ends there. Didn't get the whole song in the 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Not a blue check anymore, so I can't make long videos. But
That's not your fucking video. You just press the repost button. Yeah, unrelated to blue check. Don't ruin the good vibes here.
it's a great song.
That was a good song. So that guy's name's Chase Steely. Did I get that correct?
No, his name's Oliver something. Or something
Well, let's find
else.
out his real name and give him a proper shout out.
I'll find it. Give me a second.
I would love to have him come to Bitcoin Park.
I would, yeah. Like, I
That
mean,
was a
that song, it's just like, hit me smack in the face. Oliver Anthony is his name. Oliver Anthony. And no, I think I could see that being like a rallying song as we head into Amandable's future here. I mean, hit on everything. Dollar ain't shit.
You haven't even
taxes.
read fucking Mandibles.
I read it this morning.
Mandibles had a part about this. About
But
people need to read Mandibles.
no, I mean, I tweeted. I'm not sure if he's a Bitcoiner, but I mean, the song's about like the evils of fiat. Like you got to work.
Most
nothing
people are
to show for
Bitcoiners. They just don't realize yet.
Yeah, Oliver Anthony's a Bitcoiner.
The pain is real.
That's
pain
like-
is here.
That's like the first good country song I've heard in a while. It's like actually powerful. It's all there. Dollar ain't shit. They want to control you. They want to know what you do. And the Corporate Transparency Act is emblematic of that.
I think what's interesting about the LLC one isn't that it's an attack on privacy. It's that it's more of an attack on sophisticated rich people's privacy, which is rarer to see. But if you talk about policies in terms of wealth confiscation, for the average person, something like the $600 reporting rule or the travel rule or something like that is going to be way more consequential. But as you can tell, our corrupt politicians and essentially the oligarchs they're in bed with are pounding our privacy on every front.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive signal. I mean, I think it's a massive signal that they're going after the LLCs, which is typically where the wealthiest, not only Americans, but the wealthiest individuals on the planet store their wealth to protect it from taxes and to create some privacy around it. Like if they begin to go after that, that's when you know things have gotten bad and they're getting desperate and they're paving the road to go after those assets. And to add context to it, you have to file with FinCEN, again, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, because they're assuming that everybody is a terrorist until proven innocent. That's what they're wrapping it in, is to protect people from terrorism.
It's always terrorism and the children.
Yeah. So this one's terrorism.
I mean, since 2001, there's been a massive amount of financial privacy, like against financial privacy regulation off the back of terrorism financing. And surprise, surprise, it doesn't actually stop terrorism financing. It just hurts average people.
That was my cheeky line in the Bent last night. It was like, it's really ironic because if you really want to go after terrorism funding, you should end all taxes, because the American taxpayer is funding the largest terrorist organization on the world, which is the United States military industrial complex. So did you see we cooed Pakistan a couple weeks ago? See the latest WikiLeaks got a drop.
Was there a coup in Pakistan recently?
Yeah, they kicked out their president, and some cables leaked, I think via WikiLeaks, that proved that like the U.S. State Department was directly corresponding with them, like, yo, kick this guy out, like get him out.
And when did this coup happen?
Like in the last couple months.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'll get a link.
I just did a quick DuckDuckGo search of Pakistani coups. I mean, they've had a lot of coups, but I didn't see any recently. But I will admit that I've not been paying attention.
Let me see.
The U.S. government has a long history of facilitating coups and government changes and propping up existing governments.
Here, look, I can pull this up. It's in the Slack channel. Yeah, Imran Khan said he didn't want CIA bases in his borders, so the State Department said, yeah, we can't have this guy. We don't have to play the video. We just... Secret Pakistan cable reveals explicit U.S. pressure to remove democratically elected leader Imran Khan.
Is this Glenn Greenwald's new thing? Is System Update? I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, he's doing like I think it's a daily show. He's doing these news blurbs.
Huh. I've always liked Glenn.
So, is cooing a democratically elected leader, could that be considered terrorism? And are we funding it? I would argue maybe.
It's a really novel thought process you got there.
And it's interesting that you didn't know about it. And I imagine most people didn't know about it, just like they don't know about the Corporate Transparency Act. Then when you focus on the aliens, Trump indictments, Lizzo forcing one of her dancers to stick banana,
Hunter
eat a
Biden.
banana, Hunter Biden. What else? What else do we got? Climate change. You don't hear about the U.S.-led coup in Pakistan or the Corporate Transparency Act going live at the beginning of the year. Are you reading the comments?
No, I'm trying to look up this Pakistani coup. Honestly, I mean, just to state my ignorance, like I never even knew the democratically elected leader Imran Khan was existed as a person.
He does.
30 seconds ago.
He got to good. Oh yeah, LK99. Thank God we didn't fall down the superconductor rabbit hole. Apparently, it's a bust.
It was so fucking obvious.
Right?
The Bluechecks were obsessed with it, man.
So many people hopped on that bandwagon so quickly.
Engagement at all costs. The new era of misinformation.
Yeah. Speaking of misinformation, we're here to give you the good information. This is a Bitcoin podcast. We talk about other things too, but Clark's dashboard's back up and running. It was down for a few days earlier this week. I got some tweets saying, hey, you're going to have to use something else. But Clark got it back up right before we went live. He knew we were going live and worked his hardest to get it back up. So looking at the current state of the Bitcoin network, the current price is 29,410 bucks. One buck's going to get you 3,400 sats. Currently sitting at a $572.1 billion market cap. We are at block height 802,561. Since we last met, I believe we had a difficulty adjustment.
The coup was last year.
We did. We had a difficulty adjustment of 0.1% upward adjustment earlier this week, actually yesterday or 2 days ago. We are currently 1,823 blocks away from the next retarget, which is estimated to be on August 23rd. 13 days from now, negative 1% adjustment as of right now, early in this difficulty epoch, so take that with a grain of salt. Blocks have been coming in at 10 minutes and 6 seconds on average since that last retarget. There are currently 56,264 transactions in Clark's mempool, but maybe his mempool getting refreshed because last I checked mempool.space, there's 394,713 transactions in their mempool. It's 127 blocks of transactions waiting to get confirmed. There are 8,548.51 Bitcoin in unspent capacity on Samurai Whirlpool. I believe this is a new RHR all-time high for Samurai's Whirlpool. They released some cool new features this week. I'm sure we'll talk about when we get to the software update section. $251.5 million in unspent value there. So that is the state of the network. Blocks are being produced, getting closer to the halving.
So,
things are getting crazy.
Now that I've done 45 seconds of research live on air while Marty read Clark's dashboard, since we're now Pakistani political experts, I think it's important for us to clarify. So April 2022, the parliament had a vote of no confidence and voted him out. At the same time or right before it, he tried to dissolve parliament and call for early elections. And then they gave him a vote of no confidence and then said, you can't do that. And then some extra shady shit went down and he did get arrested. And that's where the most recent news is he was convicted and jailed on graft charges, barred from politics for 5 years under the accusation that he was taking bribes from 2018 to 2022. So that's the official background, I guess, of that situation. So if you weren't aware of a Pakistani coup, it's because it was last year. And some might argue not a coup. I don't know. Definitely meddling seems like it was happening.
Well, let's move on to another coup, Niger. What's going on there?
I mean, the U.S. government doesn't like that coup.
No, Victoria Nuland's there, and she's
and the French are getting involved now. It seems. now that we're Niger political experts.
The French have a lot more at stake than the U.S., I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gladstein has done a lot of good work on like the colonial franc and the oppression that France still exerts over their former colonies in Africa. It is quite dark and quite fucked up.
Yeah, go to Gladstein's profile and pull up the tweet about Niger and their I think it's uranium or maybe...
Yeah, so my low IQ take is just like I stand on pretty much any African policy side. Anything the French want, I'm kind of on just automatically on the opposite unless I've been proven otherwise.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
basically stored the resources and forced them into a shitcoin that allows them to have full economic advantage over their former African colonies.
Yeah, I mean, the stat
Which
that
tweet
Alex
was it?
referenced in that tweet about like French taking something like 70% of their fuel. I think it might be uranium. I don't think it's uranium. I think it's like Eubatonian.
I'll go through a lot of retweets.
I mean, we have a massive list. The Africa stuff is, look, I think in general, we should be seeing geopolitically more instability, a breakdown of trust, a failure of institutions. I am not immediately dismissing this BRICS currency of the developing world to try and rival the dollar. I actually think it might have more substantial usage than people expect for a time. And then after that, basically the thesis is trust continues to break down, gets worse. And we start to move to trust minimized systems like Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin becomes the standard. Is basically how I expect this thesis to play out, and it's how we've started to see. We have seen that been playing out over the last few years.
Agreed. Yeah, if you think the BRICS countries can't trust the Fed and the Treasury to manage the dollar appropriately or not weaponize the dollar, I think you're going to be in for a surprise with the dysfunction that will arise between all those countries trying to decide who controls that BRICS currency.
I agree, but I will say I think Lionel was onto something in Mandibles, because there is this aspect in Mandibles. I mean, she thinks Bitcoin fails, so that part she's just completely wrong about, in my opinion. But one aspect of this BRICS currency, which she does have in Mandibles, when she wrote it in fucking 2015, is that the U.S. and U.S. constituents, citizens, policymakers, Federal Reserve people, like all the people throughout all of our institutions, in the beginning kind of shake their head and say, you can't challenge U.S. dominance. Like, you'll never be able to take over the U.S. dollar. And I see a lot of signs of that. I mean, there's so much just absolute cockiness and like snub-nosed behavior coming from the American side or the American financial establishment side, that the way things have been is the way things will always be. And I think you can't, like, you can push people for a while, but eventually you push them to the limit and it hits a breaking point. And we see that on a smaller scale with these individual countries and the instability in these countries. But you also see that on a larger scale when these countries are like, I can't play with this rigged US dollar system. Like, it's just not going to happen. And they have very strong incentives to try and operate around that.
Agreed. I completely agree. I do think I wrote that in Tuesday's newsletter too, is that I think they will launch BRICS currency. I do think there will be a honeymoon period where it's somewhat successful, but in the long run, the coordination and trust that is essential for that thing to operate efficiently and fluidly is going to break down.
And then Bitcoin wins.
Yeah. And this goes back, and that newsletter was incited by the comments on the All In podcast last week by Chamath, where like,
so, once again, it's Jason, Chamath, the whole RHR clone group over there. It's like does Chamath actually, when he says that there's no, I mean, so Chamath's the excerpt that you pulled for the bent from Chamath and All In could have been like word for word out of the mandibles. Like Chamath was early Bitcoin. He knows Bitcoin exists. There's two scenarios. He either intentionally didn't say Bitcoin is a competition to the US dollar. He said basically there's no competition to the US dollar. We shouldn't be worried. Everywhere else has it worse than us. That's like our American privilege, and everyone can just go fuck themselves. He didn't mention Bitcoin. It was either because he intentionally didn't mention it, even though he thinks it's a real real alternative to the dollar, or he's just completely obtuse to the fact. And I think it's the latter. I think he's just in his own little fucking bubble. And even someone of his history that is exposed to Bitcoin, that understands at least the basic uses of Bitcoin, doesn't get it, still does not see it. And this is like, just to go back to our good friend Parker's quote that we talk about all the time, gradually then suddenly, this idea of gradually then suddenly. Like, we are not at the suddenly phase yet. We're close. We're getting closer. But like, so many people remain in denial. And the suddenly bang, like when it starts to become, oh, I always thought that way, or of course Bitcoin is the best money in the world, or whatever. Like, you will know when that fucking happens. Like, we have not quite hit that phase yet.
Yeah. And like, building on what you said earlier, like his whole, I do agree. I think it's the latter as well. I think he's obtuse to what's going on here, or maybe not what's going on in the traditional monetary system, but where Bitcoin fits into the transition away from the dollar's dominance. But that whole argument he had was like the relativism, and the dollar and treasuries are the only place to go, completely neglected to acknowledge the weaponization of the dollar in the last 2 years. And so like, that two things can be true at once. Like, yes, if we're simply looking at the landscape of fiat currencies and sovereign treasury markets, yeah, the dollar and the US treasuries are the best looking piece of shit on the pile. However, like, that can be the case, and other countries can recognize that the US has proven to be more than willing to weaponize the dollar system against its adversaries. And even if treasuries and the dollar are superior to the alternatives in that fiat realm, like, these countries, whether they like it or not, are forced to seek alternatives. And that's why the BRICS Plus currency is getting a lot of traction right now. And whether or not launches is yet to be determined, but that's essentially why it's being discussed in the first place, is like the hand of these sovereign nations has been forced. The weaponization of the dollar just removed the debasement of the dollar and the amount of debt that the US government is accruing. Like, the weaponization alone is forcing countries to seek alternatives. And there's nothing from a policy perspective that the US government can do to regain that trust and have that.
Once
that
trust
money
is lost,
flow.
it's lost.
Yeah,
Bitcoin fixes this.
it does. It does. Let's talk about some
Few
of the stuff that fix the money, fix the world.
Stay humble, stay fast. Okay, let's end the show. Logan, you can press end broadcast. We're good. Everything.
Big news the last 2 days in the Bitcoin world. Milk sad. Wallet theft enabled by weak entropy. So apparently it has been discovered that if you created a private public key pair using Bitcoin's one of their private key generators,
Bitcoin, Marty.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, what is it for the freaks?
Oh, Bitcoin is an alternative implementation of Bitcoin. So essentially it doesn't compete. It's just another way to interact with Bitcoin consensus. It's an alternative to Bitcoin Core. So similar to Bitcoin Core, just a different application of the consensus rules. Bitcoin doesn't have UTXO
developers, and then they made different trade-offs. Yeah.
Yes. So apparently, one of the ways to create private public key pairs within the Bitcoin stack was only using 32-bit entropy, and that is not enough
So it's not even close.
to make it so your private key doesn't get brute forced. And so apparently there have been a few wallets that have been drained over the last few months, and
a bunch. So like people weren't just using these for Bitcoin wallets. They were also using it to generate private keys for shitcoin wallets as well. So I don't know if you remember, but Tay Ivano, I think she's the founder of My Ether Wallet, and now she has a
MetaMask. Is she MetaMask too?
No, she's a new one. I don't know. I don't follow along. But anyway, for a shitcoiner, she follows. She's a pretty strong follow on the technical side. And she noticed a bunch of hacks that were happening, a bunch of sweeps, wallets were getting swept.
We talked about this on the show, I remember.
Yeah, and so she thinks this was related to that. It does line up. So at the core for the freaks who might not be following, we use this term called entropy. When you hear entropy, you think it means randomness. Okay, so when you're generating a secure private key, a key aspect of that process, the most important aspect of that process is that you have, or one of the most important aspects of that process is that you have a truly random
data input.
You add that the key is generated using truly random data. That's what stops someone else from creating a private key that is the same private key as yours and takes your money. This is imperative. And this is why you see with a lot of Bitcoin tools, they allow you to add your own randomness or exclusively use your own randomness. But it's also why with the power tools that allow you to exclusively use your own randomness, there's risk involved, because if you don't actually add randomness and you just, slap your keyboard a bunch of times, like humans suck at adding randomness. So this is a core issue with this library. The Libitcoin maintainers are saying this was never supposed to be used in production. Meanwhile, the functionality clearly existed. Andreas Antonopoulos in Mastering Bitcoin, which he wrote in like 2015 or 2016, cited this as a way of making private keys. So a lot of people used it as a result. But Libitcoin was not used by many people. It was poorly reviewed. It's another reason why you should be using cryptographic software that is heavily reviewed, used by a lot of people, particularly like there's not many people that can review, these crypto primitives.
Consensus code.
Yeah. I mean, it absolutely sucks to see that a bunch of people lost their money, but it shows how high the stakes are. It shows that with these lesser used projects, these vulnerabilities can exist for a while. It used something called the Mersenne twister to generate these keys, or to provide the quote unquote entropy, even though it was substandard entropy. That is what Trust Wallet from Binance was using when Ledger Donjon exposed that relatively recently. And there looks like there could be a connection there in terms of people realizing that vulnerability existed in Libitcoin as well. But yeah, that's basically the synopsis.
And what's the consensus standard for out of the box entropy? It's 256, right? It should be 256 bits.
So, yes. But it's interesting, right? So, like, as an end user, right, you're generating a private key. And all these different tools have different ways of providing that randomness. We obviously, Coinkite is a sponsor of the podcast. We have recommended cold cards for years. Coldcard has a full write-up. Coinkite has a full write-up of where they get their randomness from and how they do that and how you can potentially audit that process. And they take it very seriously. They combine randomness from multiple places. They allow you to add your own dice rolls. If you used my original cold card, or the new cold card guide I have at werunbtc.com, it advises you to essentially use this feature that cold card has, where They provide you randomness, but then you also add dice rolls. So you get the benefit of adding your own entropy on top of it, just in case they fuck something up. But this is the key function. If you're using a tool to generate a private key, like, it needs to have sufficient randomness, and you need to make sure there's no central points of failure. I think it was blockchain.info, where they were taking their randomness from random.org. And I think the website went down or something, and it was 404ing. And so instead of getting randomness, they were getting the 404 error, and a bunch of those wallets were able to get swept, right? So you need defense in depth. You need multiple sources. You need to make sure there's not a central point of failure. And this all is in a greater context of the same principle is used for encryption and generating secure private keys when you're using any kind of encryption software. And there's been many cases where government actors have attempted to compromise commonly used sources of randomness, whether those are like Intel chips or stuff like that. So this is a very serious situation, or it's a very serious problem that requires really a strong amount of care in terms of solving that for users, reducing their risk, while also, not making it completely out of reach for the average user.
Yeah, and it also brings up an interesting discussion around Bitcoin security. Like, does this push more people towards multisig? Because in a multisig scenario, to sweep funds from a wallet, you need to essentially crack 3 separate private keys.
That hopefully you generated using different tools.
Yes. And then on top of that, things like mini scripts, covenants, vaults. Like, does this act as a forcing function? Does this instance of wallets being swept lead to more awareness that leads to people getting wiser about their security setup? So multisig
definitely mitigates it. Like, just think about it in practice, right? Like, if you're using multiple vendors, right, for keys, or you're using different tools for generating your private keys, if you have one key is generated in Sparrow wallet, for instance, like one key is the seed signer generated key, and then one is a cold card generated key, like, you need multiple of those private keys to be compromised. So there's obviously a clear benefit there. This also does bring up, so this aspect, by the way, there's like, I'm not going to say a conspiracy theory.
I saw you talking about. Are you talking about Lorenz quoting their GitHub activity?
Yeah, the GitHub activity on Libitcoin stopped right around the vulnerability happened. But the reason I bring this up, because that could just be a coincidence, there could be different things. There's another element to this type of situation where, rather than not using sufficient randomness, part of it, the derivation of the private key is done using something that the maintainer knows that no one else knows publicly, so the maintainer can exit scam you, which was not the case in this situation. The private keys were just incredibly insecure, period. But you could have a situation where a manufacturer of a hardware wallet, for instance, is saying that your private key is being generated randomly, but really they specifically can regenerate your key because of them compromising that process. And that is something we haven't really seen play out, partially because I think it's just easier to exit scam custodial wallet users, because most people just use custodial wallets. A lot of people just use custodial wallets, and attacks tend to go for the lowest hanging fruit. But that is a very real theoretical attack you could have, where you have like a hardware wallet manufacturer that is generating all these keys for 5-10 years. And they really have compromised it from the beginning. And as a result, they can sweep your wallet.
What about if the hardware manufacturer just creates the private key for you, like Ballet Wallet?
Then obviously they can just sweep the wallet.
I know. Still stunning that people buy that product, but
use Ballet Wallet.
Yeah. And so we get like multi-sig, leveraging different manufacturers, definitely a step up from single sig. Security with a private public key pair produced by one entity, and then beyond that,
add your own entropy. Also add your own entropy. Like, And there, you can also, one of those keys, it can be all of your entropy. I will say though, for like the average person, there is risk in just doing, if it's single sig, just doing all your own entropy, because people just suck at randomness.
Yeah. Well, Norwal Tacos is saying time lock your main bag, maybe. And I think that's a wrong framing, because even if you time lock it, somebody can have it, the private key, and understand when the time lock gets released. Yeah.
You're just racing, and they can just keep increasing the fee, and you can keep increasing the fee, and the miners get all the money.
Yeah. And that's why I think
time lock fix this.
Mini script that has the ability using time locks. I mean, time locks as an aspect to security, I think makes a lot of sense, but put into a model like Anchor Watch is employing in Liana with their implementation of mini script, which basically either over time allows you to use other keys to move Bitcoin, something like Op Vault, which does something similar. It's not possible yet because it hasn't been merged. Op CTV, another solution. But yeah, I do think you should expect that these types of attacks will increase over time as people who...
This wasn't an attack. This was incompetence.
Well, incompetence that, I mean, an attacker leverage to steal people's Bitcoin. Yeah. But you have to imagine 15 years in, there's probably other dead bodies in the technical details of some projects that have come and gone that people leverage to create private public key pairs that will be brought to the surface at some point in the future. And that's something you guys should keep in mind, is especially if you have a larger stack, like how are you securing that? I think multi-sig, excuse me, I think multi-sig, and eventually when the UX and around miniscript and the amount of time that it's been tested increases significantly, I think moving to a solution like that will be advantageous as well. Still early days here.
Which brings us to our next vulnerability disclosure, which Fireblocks released, and they're calling this Bitforge, where they uncovered vulnerabilities, a bunch of zero-day vulnerabilities in 15 major MPC wallets. MPC stands for multi-party computation, and it's kind of attempts to accomplish the similar goals to multisig, but it's chain agnostic. So a lot of shitcoin custodians use it because they can use it across their entire stack, not just Bitcoin. But as a result, it adds a bunch of additional complexity, and complexity is oftentimes the enemy of security. And as a result, a bunch of these implementations have vulnerabilities. If you are not using a custodian to hold your Bitcoin, you are not affected by this. I mean, I don't know of any Bitcoiners that are, holding Bitcoin self-custody using MPC. Most of the time, it's like these big omnibus custodians that are using it. Someone like Coinbase Custody or Fireblocks themselves, who was the back end for Prime Trust and might be the back end for Fortress Trust, but I'm not sure.
I would assume they are. Yeah, MPC. I was golfing with a Bitcoiner this morning who works on multi-sig products, and we were talking about, because Rindal, how do you say his name? Rinjdal? There's like a war going on between
different names who choose hard to pronounce names, so we can just call him whatever you want to call him.
Rinjdal.
Rygindale.
Rygindale. Him and Rob Hamilton have been going. Apparently, there's a subsect of Bitcoiners who think MPC on Bitcoin makes sense. I haven't, honestly, dove down that rabbit hole.
I think Leishman, who I have a lot of respect for, is pro MPC, and I think if I recall correctly, his major argument was you don't have to. You can rotate keys.
You can rotate keys easily
without the addresses becoming invalid, because you want the old addresses to still receive Bitcoin. You get a deposit address on River or something. Just because you change who can sign doesn't mean you want their old deposit address to no longer be valid or have to keep the keys or the quorum for that. which I think is a pretty, I mean, on my basic left curve IQ on that seems like that makes compelling sense to me. I don't pretend to know otherwise. But yeah, just hold your own keys, freaks. Just stay humble, stack sats. Don't use poorly reviewed wallets. Add your own entropy, and sleep well. Maybe add a passphrase. Passphrases help here too if it's a secure passphrase. And ideally graduate to multi-sig eventually. But if you're not holding that much Bitcoin, if it's in the early days, like don't overcomplicate your setup. Don't like freak out and go crazy. It's not one size fits all. I know there's nuance here, but
the MPC on Bitcoin subject is one that I'm going to put on the list to dive deeper into, get a better understanding of, because I have seen at arm's length debates around that versus miniscript, adding MPC to a miniscript setup. Admittedly, I'm ignorant on how it would work.
It's not mutually exclusive, right?
No.
If someone like River, and once again, don't pretend to fully understand their business or the different trade-offs of MPC versus multi-sig. But I would imagine from here, from my point of view, that you would use, a very hardened, simple multi-sig setup, geographically distributed for your cold storage. And then for hot wallets, like you're going to make additional trade-offs, right? And if the main trade-off, I think that's a very important quality of a hot wallet, is every deposit address someone has at your exchange should always go to their wallet. Like you should always be able to receive a deposit address, even if it's used already. So if that's the case, then you use that for the hot wallet. But the overwhelming majority of funds are in a hardened multi-sig geographically distributed wallet, right? And you use a mix of it. Just like I think it's important to keep in mind, like options are good. We want as many options as possible, and you end up using whatever tools fit any given situation best, and that's what you use.
Yeah. Gary Krause is saying in the comments, you can get privacy with MPC, only one signature, no way to tell how many keys used, which is an added benefit. But that, I think that highlights, don't make the trade-off to have a less secure model in MPC when something like cross-input signature aggregation, leveraging Taproot and Schnorr, can probably get you the same output. Right?
Look, there's many different tools. Use the tool you think fits best. Nothing's perfect. Everything has trade-offs. I really just want to get to the most important story of the year, which is that the world's richest rapper, our favorite rapper of all time, Razzlekhan, has pled guilty to the Bitfinex 2016 hack with her husband.
It was actually her husband that did it, right?
Well, she helped launder it, and she was the world's richest rapper, so it's important to keep her involved in this. But yeah, it does seem like their official story is that he was the main one behind the hack, and then she helped him launder the money after the fact.
Let's just zoom in on that court painting.
His rap career was way less successful than her rap career.
Look at the humiliation ritual here. They're making them still wear, even the lawyer has to wear a mask. It's 2023.
I can't believe we still have court artists. They're probably going to be this. Yeah, but just, slip that thing into Midjourney and boom, done.
Well, I was just about to make the case. Maybe this is the last artist job that can't get replaced by AI, because the AI would need a camera.
No, you just tell the AI, just
you can't prompt that. You can't prompt that accurately, I don't think.
Do you think this is a very accurate representation of them, or do you think it's just a generic blonde woman, a generic fat lawyer, and a generic brown-haired guy?
I mean, just look at the body posture. She was hunched over.
He does not look like
head down.
Not the Razzlekhan I know. Not the world's richest rapper.
She's been humbled. Was she the world's richest rapper? She richer than Drake?
Dude, for the fucking Bitfinex hack, 120,000 Bitcoin? Close to that?
Let's see. What's that at today's price? Let me do some math here.
They got arrested around the top.
All right, we'll do it at 60K. Yeah, it's $7 billion almost.
Yeah,
World's richest rapper.
For a moment.
Yeah. I think we have to do our canned reminder when the subject comes up is that the U.S. government should give the Bitcoin back to Bitfinex. Now it's going to happen, but they should.
Did I read appropriately that they gave a tiny bit back or no?
I don't know.
I don't see that in here. They're not going to. Very doubtful.
BitGo doesn't leverage MPC, do they? They might, do they? I'm not sure.
They might for their shitcoin products. I mean, that hack was...
BitGo blames Bitfinex. Bitfinex blames BitGo.
Yeah, they're both to fucking blame. And it was an incredibly vulnerable system that they tried to roll out to get around regulations. And it was a poor decision. It's a really poor decision. Essentially, it meant that every single user, instead of a hot wallet, cold wallet situation, every user had an individual hot wallet that was quote unquote multi-sig. But the user only had one key, and Bitfinex and BitGo each had a key. So as long as you compromise those keys, you were able to sweep everyone's funds. But Bitfinex was trying to do it as a way to get around regulations by saying, we don't have custody, it's multi-sig.
Yeah. Lessons learned. That happened in 2016. That was like the hack that led to the bull market. Bitcoin, they got hacked in Bitcoin.
It was right before the 2017 rip.
Yeah.
And Bitfinex was able to like paper it over with their shitcoin that they issued.
What was it called? Leo?
Yeah, I think so. Or Leo came out afterwards.
Did we mention last week?
What?
Tether?
Yeah, we did. Leo came out after. I think Leo, maybe Leo was like their BNB competitor that came out after, and they had a separate token that they issued to everyone who lost money. I think they had a separate token that was, the way it was set up was like after a certain date, it would automatically redeem for $1, but you could trade it early. And they basically bought up a bunch of people's claims ahead of time to save money at like an 80% discount. But it was specifically a 1-to-1 eventually peg, while Leo is more of like a BNB FTT kind of competitor, exchange token competitor. Yeah. Anyway, stay on Bluechecks sets. And if you like somehow hack billions of dollars of Bitcoin, like don't try and launch like a cringe rap career. Like
I don't know, even Loaded was laying low for many years.
Yeah, these people were not laying low though.
No. But even laying low, if you he combined inputs.
He got fucked on the Bcash fork. These guys got caught seemingly trying to use a gift card company that was tied to their name.
Yeah. Beware, if you're going to steal a bunch of Bitcoin, don't take the forks. Don't try and launder it.
I mean, the real lesson is that if you're targeted, there's a lot of places you can make a mistake, and all it takes is one mistake.
Yep. Moving on from hacks to Bitcoin sales revenue, Block reported their Q2 financials, and their Q2 revenue was 5.5 billion. More than half of that, or nearly half of that, came from Bitcoin sales. And I know every time these numbers come out, we talk about, like, when it comes to Bitcoin sales, that means buys and sells, right?
And it means the actual amount of Bitcoin, not their margin, which I think is the bigger. I think it might just be sales, but I think it's like if you sell a $30,000 Bitcoin and you make like $5 off of it, you clock the $30,000 as the revenue.
Still, I'm trying to look at this gross profit. Cash App gross profit up 37% year on year. It's pretty
The
good.
number's quite high, and it's a substantial part of this massive financial company's business.
Yeah.
And as specifically, I would say, like the Cash Apps of the world are not your degen trader types. They tend to be more average types of people. They tend to be, the people that are just humbly stacking to cold storage. So it's good to see those numbers up and continuing to go up.
I think I saw Lyle Pratt from Vita tweeting out that if it was purely buys and sells aren't included in that over the last quarter over Q2 of this year, Cash App users were buying more than the block subsidy released
the
each day.
part is like no one knows for sure because of the way they did it, which is just predatory and malicious. But
for us content creators,
it's like for anyone who's trying to like figure out what the fuck's going on.
I'm pretty sure because we dove into the financial statements. I'm pretty sure it's buys and sells because we dove into them 1 quarter after.
It wasn't clear.
I think it was. Somebody rolled the tape.
They said
I'm pretty certain
the total sale amount of Bitcoin sold to customers, which we recognize as Bitcoin revenue, was $2.39 billion, up 34% year over year.
Oh.
Total sale amount of Bitcoin sold to customers. Like that, when I read that
sounds like pure buys.
Correct.
Yeah.
But like they also make revenue off of sales too, because there's a fee.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit ambiguous, but it seems like it's sales.
We'll nail down that
won't.
accounting one day. One day we will.
As long as they keep measuring it the same way, what we want to see is the number go up.
Yes. Talking about number go up, number of stable coins goes up. PayPal launched their stable coin this week to much fanfare from the idiots in crypto land. And to be clear, it's really not PayPal launching a stable coin or essentially white labeling Paxos' stable coin and offering it to their users. And on top of that, I don't know if No Bullshit Bitcoin has it in here, but they're offering yield on stable coins and Bitcoin too now.
Yeah, so I mean, this article is from a couple of days ago. I think the yield got announced today. Obviously, freaks don't trust any custodians, but really don't trust a custodian that's offering to give you free money to lend out your money to degens, like we saw last cycle with BlockFi and Celsius and Barry Silbert and Gemini. But
you laughing at Yellow?
Yeah, fuck him, man. Don't stop believing Yellow. Do
it.
The Paxos is, to those who aren't aware, Paxos is one of the smaller market share regulated stablecoins. Regulated stablecoins like USDC. USDC is the dominant player, which is a partnership with Circle and Coinbase. Do not compete with Tether, which is a black market US dollar that skirts a bunch of US regulations. And they definitely don't compete with Bitcoin, which is decentralized and censorship resistant. Well, none of these centralized stablecoins are, because if you're pegged to something that is not native on chain, then it means a centralized third party actually has to maintain that peg, and that centralized third party is obviously can censor you, can freeze your money, can steal your money at will. All that said, this seems like a very easy win for Paxos. No one really cared about their stablecoin. PayPal is one of the largest financial institutions in the world. They have a massive install base already. For whatever reason, people trust the brand, even though PayPal has just fucked over users left and right for a fucking decade now. So like, it makes business sense. It makes business sense from both PayPal's perspective. They didn't have to do any extra legwork. It makes sense from Paxos's perspective. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Paxos do other white label with horrible brands like Western Union or like a Visa or someone. It makes logical sense that those fintech brands would try and extend their influence at relatively low lift into this industry.
Yeah. But PayPal went with Ethereum to integrate crypto into their platform. Bitcoin's dead. There's no innovation. There's nothing going on here. I saw many of those tweets this week. We're still so early. I mean, the crypto people completely don't get it.
I think the big shoe to drop is still going to be like we need a major proof of stake failure, which will happen eventually.
Steam it.
Yeah, a major. I said a major one. I think ETH continues to centralize. I think we're going to start to see the repercussions from that. But at least in the shitcoiner realm, like in the crypto realm, like they're going to be in denial for a while until that becomes very obvious that the ultimate goal of these systems should be censorship resistance. That is where the value prop lies. Actually, being able to use them in a trust minimized way, which centralized systems do not have. And this push towards centralization across the industry, the quote unquote crypto industry, will have significant ramifications. We just haven't seen them yet. Governments move very slowly, and those repercussions will become obvious afterwards. Then, I mean, that's within the crypto industry. I think the all-in guys are like a perfect example of people in the tech and finance worlds that still do not realize to this day that the power and impact of that Bitcoin will, how Bitcoin will basically shape global society. I think most people are still grossly underestimating that impact and what Bitcoin adoption looks like. And yeah, it's going to take time. It's still going to take time.
Do you, let me reframe this. What do you think the probability of something like stability pools within a Fediment or something like Galoy's stable sats taking market share from stablecoins?
I think centralized stablecoins provide convenience and cost benefits. We see that across all centralized systems. There's usually a direct trade-off balance between censorship resistance and security versus convenience and cost. So as a result, they are superior solutions in the current age for most people until they get rugged, right? Like the main trade-off is that you can get rugged relatively easily. And I think trying to evolve that model to be still require trust, but require less trust and reduce centralized risk is mostly a waste of cycles, in my opinion, because at some point we're going to hit that suddenly part of gradually then suddenly, and no one's going to want to use fucking dollars. No one's going to want to use inferior money. People are going to want to use Bitcoin. Bitcoin will be the better money. Bitcoin will be everyone's stablecoin. And so the question is like, what is that window where, you know, regulators take down Tether, USDC, and things are getting frozen left and right, and they become completely unusable, that someone's going to use a slightly less trusted version of a pegged dollar system versus Bitcoinization. And I just don't think that window of opportunity is that big, particularly since, you know, there's so many different players that are launching these different centralized bullshits all over the place.
Centralized bullshits.
It's stopgap, right? It's like it's
Agreed.
Clearly there's a need. There's a need for people around the world to access dollars outside of the banking system that they're cut out of. That need is being met right now with rug pull risk. But the question is, when does that demand dry up? And I think that happens sooner rather than later. I think people don't realize that. And I think putting stable coins on Lightning, doing stability pools, all this other shit is like mostly a distraction. And as long as Tether exists, which once again, Could get shut down any day. Could get rug pulled any day. No one fucking knows. But as long as things like Tether exist, it's filling that need. And without a strong need for people to look for an alternative, I don't really see the use case.
I would agree there. It is stopgap.
So Twitter released their Elon started paying Bluechecks portion of their ad revenue, right? So you get ad revenue payments, right, through from Twitter, depending on how many Bluechecks have viewed your content. It's a very opaque system. It has very strong similarities with a lot of social credit scores that we've seen, where people, depending on what they say, get paid different amounts. Now, why do I bring this up? I mean, I think, first of all, it's incredibly dystopian, and it's really unfortunate and sad to see so many so-called freedom-oriented influencers basically just immediately getting co-opted and joining this social credit score system. But the real reason I bring it up right now is because how does he handle his payouts? He handles his payouts through Stripe. It goes through the legacy fiat system. You do full KYC, you do all that shit, whatever, right? Now, there's a decent amount of influential people in the crypto space that thinks he improves that situation by adding USDC. Instead of withdrawing from Stripe, you KYC with Goldman or whatever, Circle, and you withdraw your USDC token from them instead. And it's just a distraction. It's just bullshit, right? Like the real revolution is something like Nostr, where you don't have a centralized middleman and you're getting Bitcoin is being transferred directly from audience directly to creator. And there's no middleman and there's no KYC and you're not registering your identity anywhere. And there's this middle ground period where you're going to see all this shit, but it's like, are you actually accomplishing much? Like, are you getting tangible goals there by just changing it to USDC on the withdrawal side and switching who your centralized middleman is and switching that flow up from using something like Stripe? And I think that you can go along that line as well, right? It's like, okay, so it's like they're currently using someone that's currently using USDC. Maybe they should use StableSats or they should use a stability pool or something like that. And it's like, are you really adding that much extra value to that end user in the period before hyper-Bitcoinization? And I just don't really think that's the case.
Yeah, it's all LARP. I was flashing proof that I'm not just hiding my blue check. I don't have one anymore.
So you didn't get your ad payout?
No. And I could have. I looked at the metrics.
I'm surprised you denied it, Marty.
More than 10 million impressions over the last 90 days, way more than that. And
look at you.
Didn't take it. It's not worth it. No, but it is crazy. Crazy.
Did you remove TFTC's Bluecheck too, or just your personal account?
TFTC's is still up. I got to get on that.
Did you sign up for the ad partnership on that account?
No. That account does not get anywhere near.
You got your Stripe hooked up to it?
No. Should I? But
it's a social credit score.
No, shout out to Whitney for calling out people this week. And you, obviously, for doing it. Now me. He's going to turn it into WeChat. It's going to be your social credit score.
Did you just shout at yourself?
Yeah. Shout out to me. Non-Bluecheck. No, it is. And there was a quote from the new WEF CEO that came out today. They're going to start censoring people, even if it's within the limits of the law, but it's tasteless. They're going to remove the content from the site.
It is so surprising that it unfolded this way. I don't know. I don't know who could have seen it coming. It's just really disappointing.
And they're rugging people's accounts. Did you see they took the dude who's had app music and has been using it for like 17 years? Really
surprising. Just dumbfounded. Yeah. Nostr fixes this.
Oh, I know.
Individuals and companies and the governments that they report to should not have control over speech on the internet. Protocols, not platforms.
Oh, we didn't get up on Zap.stream?
No, I don't. I'll take personal responsibility, but I don't think it was my fault. So I won't take personal responsibility. I think they need to troubleshoot something on their end. All the other streams worked, and I didn't change any settings.
Yeah. Resist the blue check. It is crazy to see the amount of people that really think that Elon's going to be this bastion, a savior of free speech.
It's pretty sad. It's incredibly sad.
Yeah.
Not surprising, but it's sad and frustrating.
Can we go down a little Marty Jones rabbit hole?
Whatever you want to do, Marty.
Did you see the meme of the X logo made into a Freemasons sign?
Yes.
There's something there. There's something there. I don't know what it is yet, but there's something there. Okay. Symbolism. Remember, Elon wore a Boba Fett costume to a Halloween party. Believe people when they tell you who they are. I think I said this on another podcast. Somebody asked me about Elon and X, like free speech. I think he's the Manchurian candidate of the private sector. That's how I would describe Elon.
Well, by that you mean like a CIA asset, right?
Yeah, like somebody put out there to make you believe that he's going to do good things, but it's got ulterior motives. Moving down the list, Kenya, listen to the pod. They heard our orb spiel, and they kicked WorldCoin out. Not only did they do that, we talked about that last week, that they were kicking WorldCoin out, but they actually raided WorldCoin's warehouse and seized machines that store data. Kenya does not want the orb within their borders. It's good to see.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the issue with centralized systems, right? And the next, because it's not just WorldCoin that you're trusting with all this shit, and not only can WorldCoin censor you and seize your money and fuck with your data and sell your data and share your data, but also any governments that pressure them are complicit with them. And in this case, who knows what data is on the machines that the Kenyan government seized? I'm not going to just immediately be like the Kenyan government is the good guys for going after this shitcoin. I don't really have a strong relationship with the Kenyan government, but I just, in general, just don't trust governments.
That's what a Kenyan government asset would say.
Yeah, it's true. But the next story I have on the list lines up with this as well, which is Iraq is blocking Telegram access in the country, saying privacy concerns. And this is a tale as old as time. This is why these systems are built the way they are built. When I'm talking about freedom tech, when I'm talking about these decentralized, robust systems, and the trade-offs they make are built in a way so that they cannot, that they're immune, or they can at least mitigate pressure from governments. Because time and time again, when we see these centralized systems get released to the world, they get pressured. The founders get corrupted. The team running it complies. And that's if it's not just a blatant exit scam, privacy overreach, whatnot. I mean, I have my own concerns with Telegram. It's not encrypted by default. If you use the encrypted chat, it's a proprietary encryption. We talked about MilkSad today about how you don't want to roll your own crypto. You don't want to fuck around with these crypto primitives. That's what Telegram does with your encrypted chats, but also by default, nothing's encrypted. So it's a massive privacy hole, and it's a massive centralization hole. And this is why we need systems that are not controlled by individuals, that are not controlled by companies, because that's the only tangible solution.
Agreed. We talked about Simple X on the Bitcoin Review podcast yesterday. And we talked about it on Rabbit Hole Recap last week. It is a very unique solution to this problem. Moving down the list, we got a long list. I've got a dinner to get to. We have plenty of time.
We can just wrap it now if you want. Stay on Stack Sats Freaks.
That was a good one. A good one. We can't go yet. We have a lot to talk about, including the fact that European Bitcoiners can still challenge FATF's travel rule on constitutional grounds.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe this, but I put it in the list anyway.
The quote in the No Bullshit Bitcoin blurb is, I think the international crypto community should realize that it has the opportunity to challenge the travel rule of the financial... I'm reading it, Logan. You're scrolling away from it. You're getting the switch.
Before the European General Court under rules of annulment, but you must be quick.
I'm used to you reading it somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true. Now I'm reading it on Ecamm. Okay.
Like, why doesn't this guy challenge it?
Maybe he's not European.
Maybe.
So let's go down to the detail. Now you can scroll down, Logan. So it's right on constitutionality of the travel rule in crypto on June 9, 2023. The EU took the Financial Action Task Force Rule 7b some steps further into the TFR regulation. It is little known, however, that until the 22nd of August, it is possible to challenge it on constitutional grounds. So it looks like they made a move to make a constitution. They made a move to legitimize it on June 9th, and you have until August 22nd to challenge that move. I don't think that they're going to listen to you, but you should try. Who knows? We could be wrong.
Yeah, they're not. They don't give a shit.
Yeah. Again, anytime the Financial Action Task Force is brought up, good time to remind you, this is a supranational regulatory body. They don't actually regulate. They provide guidelines that all regulators seem to adopt. We talked about it a few weeks ago. Kuwait banned Bitcoin in all forms. You can't receive Bitcoin. You can't buy Bitcoin. You can't mine Bitcoin because they convinced themselves that they will not be able to comply with the Financial Action Task Force guidelines for cryptocurrencies. And so the supranational regulatory body filled with unelected officials has immense control over your ability to access freedom technology, particularly Bitcoin. And you should begin asking the questions. Who the fuck is the Financial Action Task Force? Why do they have this power? And why do our governments implement their guidelines without any pushback? Why do we let... Yeah. Insane clown world. Clown world. Moving on. Voltage partners with the HRF to help dissidents, NGOs accept Bitcoin.
This is good to see. I mean, I've done a lot of work with activists, and Voltage is the recommendation for BTC Pay server already. So it's good to see a formal partnership here. Just huge shout out to the Voltage team. They have an incredibly useful project. They're very high integrity, and they just continue to ship. So,
yeah. Staying on the HRF, this was cool to see. Iris received half of the HRF secret Nostr group chats.
So, by the way, we talked about earlier the issues with bounties and wordings and HRF choosing to basically go with, it's up to us if we approve something or not. First bounty has been awarded. Already has controversy involved with it. Some people think they shouldn't have been awarded. Some people think they shouldn't. It was half. It was supposed to be a 2 Bitcoin bounty for this Nostr DMs. This Nostr DMs bounty. Nostr DMs, to be clear, exist, but if you have someone's public key, you can see everything, which you have by default on Nostr, obviously. That's what someone's account is tied to. If you have their public key, you can see who they're communicating with and how often they communicate. So this bounty is basically, how do we do that without leaking that information? So Iris released this. Their method is essentially, if you start a chat or a group chat, it creates a new Nostr private key public key pair that participates.
One, right?
And the only way for that to get compromised is if an individual compromises everybody. It's a clever, relatively hacky way of implementing it. But
you're essentially just sending messages to yourself, but everybody has access to the key, so it's like a group chat, right?
But it's really straightforward and clever and practical, and I like that aspect of it. I do agree with a lot of people that say like, oh, maybe it's, not what the intention of the bounty was. But anyway, that's why HRF came up with the solution of giving 1 Bitcoin for now. And then the last Bitcoin is going to be for something that is actually interoperable and has a Nostr improvement proposal, a NIP, out there so other clients can implement it. And I think that doesn't necessarily preclude Iris. Like, it's right now, Iris's solution only works in Iris. Presumably other clients could add cross compatibility with it. But yeah, that's where we currently stand on this. But it's good to see more money go to open source developers. So,
well, that too, and I think it should be mentioned. A lot of signal here in the power and promise of Nostr. I mean, this bounty was claimed by Marty Malmi, who, for those of you who don't know, is like one of the first ever like Bitcoin developers. He was like really early days with Satoshi and Hal Finney.
Serious.
Yeah.
Was his name. That is true. I will say, I mean, just to add on top of the power of Nostr, or the dev mind share of Nostr, I believe Iris was a standalone project trying to solve the social media problem, and then Nostr came around and he pivoted and just added Nostr support and became a Nostr client, which is what you want to see. We want protocols, not platforms.
Yeah. Shout out to Marty, the other Marty, getting it done. No, he's got a very interesting story. I mean, he came out.
You shouted out yourself earlier.
It's confidence, not cockiness. You got to be confident.
Shout out to Whitney. Shout out to you, and shout out to me.
Moving along.
Frustrating, but not surprising. Moving on.
We're going to talk about it for a few weeks. The AI for All hackathon wrapped up last week, and Fetty, Stack, and Replit announced the winners. The winner was Photobolt, which is a really interesting project, leveraging something that Pablo in the comments created, these lightning vending machines, essentially creating AI agents to complete tasks. Photobolt. The demo they have, from what I understand, Cody, I watched a YouTube video when data vending machines, not lightning vending machines. Thank you, Pablo. When Cody announced Photobolt as the winner, he said they iterated further than the demo video that they have going around online. But essentially, the idea is you can take a picture and give an AI agent commands to manipulate that to create a poster. And you essentially send that job off via Nostr to AI bots scraping for these jobs. They come back with a quote for what they think is a fair price to complete the certain task, and then you agree to pay over the Lightning Network. It completes one task or the amount of tasks necessary to move on to the next task, and then you get your poster at the end. It was pretty cool to see. That was the winner. They took home $10,000 worth of Bitcoin and a bunch of other stuff. There's a lot of cool projects here. Any others stick out to you?
It was cool because they had winners in different categories, right? So they had a winner of the agents, machine payments. That was a project called Flow. They had a winner on the privacy track. That's called Nettonomy. They had a winner of a training track, which was called Bitcoin Pal. Winner of the Bitcoin education track, which BitDevs upgraded. And then there's a whole list of other projects that are notable mentions. I mean, I think this just goes to show the viral nature and the power of building on top of open systems, and why we think Nostr plus AI plus Bitcoin is going to be ultimately the winning combo. And it's because all these people can make these different tools without reinventing the wheel. They all get to share the same social graph. They all get to share the same payments layer, and they can do that without permission. So you can just iterate on top of it, and we're just going to see like the innovation we see as a result. People are not ready for it. I just don't think you can really comprehend. I'm probably one of the most bullish people on Nostr in the world. I don't know how many people exist that are more bullish than me on Nostr, and I don't think I can comprehend what the repercussions are when you actually mix the three of those projects together. Or I mean, I wouldn't call AI a project, but if you combine Nostr, Bitcoin, and AI, like you just can't even comprehend what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, go watch the PhotoBolt video. It's pretty insane. Like you just give it a prompt, you upload a picture, like, hey, I want to manipulate this picture in this way. You give that prompt, you send it off to Nostr as an event. You have AI bots scraping events for jobs to complete. They pick up the job, give you a quote, you pay, and eventually you get an end product. Yeah,
Yellow. Did you see Yellow?
We,
There's 14 people that are more bullish on Nostr than me. I think that's probably appropriate. That's about right.
I saw you noting, ostriching, that if you got on Rogan, you would talk about Nostr and not Bitcoin. I like that.
100%. Let's make it happen, Joe. If you're listening, love to come on the show.
Yeah, and Pablo's not clarifying, but adding context in the chat. The cool thing about data vetting machines is that each single step is a marketplace. So like I said, the link will be in the show notes, but if you go watch the PhotoBolt demo, I believe there was 4 or 5 steps. One was like, hey, take this picture of a whiskey bottle and take out the background, isolate the whiskey bottle. The second was, hey, put it in a beach setting. And the third was like, hey, add a logo and a tag.
Remove product background, generate logo, generate background, overlay product on background, overlay logo on product.
Yeah.
And those 5 individual quote unquote marketplaces where basically there's a supply and demand order, offer, fill, right?
Yeah. And you pay like 10 sats per task.
Pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's like really leading in. You mentioned it in passing, but I think particularly with Nostr, the power of that embedded social graph that you can bootstrap as somebody building a product is something that people really don't grok yet. Like having access to a massive market of potential users out of the gate is an incredible improvement. Like
each of these individual Nostr apps, right, is like they're all trying to be a mass market. I mean, there's a bunch of apps that are trying to be mass market apps, right? And if any of them hit it off and get millions of users, every other Nostr app gets millions of users. And they're all trying to do it at the same time. And they're all kind of like competing but complementary to each other, which is fucking insane. Like imagine if there was like a Snapchat, a Twitter, and a Facebook, and they're all launching at the same time, and a Reddit, and they're all launching at the same time, and they're trying their best to get new users, but every time one of them gets a new user, they all get a new user. And like that is, you start to scratch the surface on what is possible. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, like we can't even fathom. Like this is a whole new reality. Yeah, it's like, what does that do? Like, what does this stuff look like? Like, do you even have companies at the end of the day? Like, do you? I mean, yeah, it's probably kind of like bad framing, but
100%.
But like, do you like?
We're not even smoking weed here, Marty.
No.
Do companies even exist?
No, the point I'm trying to make is like, yeah, this is such a new way to interact with a protocol that we can't even fathom at scale what it's going to produce in terms of
like what are the implications.
Yeah. All right, moving on the list. Stratum V2 reference implementation roadmap has been announced. It's a pretty big step. We've been talking about Stratum V2, I feel like, for 4 years at least on this show. So is this just core contributors releasing this, or is this Spiral or Foundry?
I think Pavelnex just released it.
Pavelnex, okay.
Isn't he like the head of the project now? Our good friend Pavel. Pavel's like probably, if he's listening right now, he's probably so mad at me. Stratum V2 is important. We've talked about it in the past. Freaks, raise your hand if you don't know what Stratum V2 is. See, this is the advantage of the in-person shows. I have no idea who raised their hand. You got to imagine the majority know, but the main premise of Stratum V2 is twofold. Well, the core of it is to improve the protocol that miners interact with their mining pools. And that is to make it more secure in terms of transmission, more efficient in terms of the amount of data that is sent. And then the key thing that a lot of people talk about, which is this idea of block construction, which is instead of the mining pool operator choosing which transactions are in a block, the ideal goal of Stratum V2 is that they would put that block construction in the hands of individual miners. I do wonder, Stratum V2 released a roadmap. It is quite rare for open source projects to release roadmaps. LDK released one relatively recently, and I wonder if it's like a spiral thing. Like if Spiral's like release a roadmap. We're funding you. You should have a roadmap out there on like what you're focused on.
I mean, they brought on Steve Lee. He's a product manager. I guess product managers like product roadmaps. So
it's a very pretty roadmap. I'm really excited for the now column, the later column, and the future column. I think all three columns together could be quite compelling.
No, but to add more context to this too, I know Brains and Foundry have implemented it. You can benefit from some of the features that Stratum V2 offers today. Matt mentioned transmission. What he means by that is the transmission of shares from an individual miner to the pool. Stratum V1, that data is sent over unencrypted channels, and so you have the ability to man in the middle attack that and sort of jack hash rate. With Stratum V2, they encrypt that data, so it's end-to-end encrypted. So if you're pointing your hash at Foundry or Brains right now, and there may be a couple others that I'm unaware of, your shares that are being transmitted from your miners to the pool are encrypted. And so the man in the middle.
You need to be running an Antminer with updated firmware, right?
I don't think so. I could be wrong. I'm not sure.
Like Brains, for instance, I'm pretty sure they don't support any of the Stratum V2 features unless you are running Brains on your machines. And
that's true. Yes.
Micro BT, right? Support?
They don't know when what's miner.
It makes sense to me that like obviously you need to update the firmware of the machine because the machine speaks Stratum V1.
Yeah.
So if you don't update it, like how's it going to?
Yeah, that actually does make sense. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Who just released their token?
I think they're making fun of that Stratum V2 released a token. They didn't. I think it's a poor joke.
Carlos is saying, I think anything can connect to a Stratum V2 proxy server.
Carlos also thinks we should switch to morning rips only. So question his judgment.
He's backed off from that stance in recent years.
Oh, he commented on Nostr today. He's like, when morning rips only. You see, Joshua, it was a joke. Apparently poor.
Moving on, we're getting into software.
Thank you for participating in the live chat. I appreciate all the freaks who participate in the live chat.
We're getting into software updates. So before we do that, let's read the top 4 boosts from last week. Rabbit hole recap number 264. Fitch eyes U.S. default as quote-unquote soft landing, narratives falters. At Sfaniel, 77,777 sats. Education, study Bitcoin. I agree. At user 3034340, 50,000 sats. Next boost from at Paez. Cheers. Cheers emoji, gentlemen. Cheers to you, sir.
Appreciate you, freak. Thanks for the support.
At Cantillionaire, 11,111 sats. Ones across the board. Palindrome boost. Mandibles.
Mandibles.
And at Lone Star, double R, 7,777 sats. Sevens across the board. Palindrome boost. Soft landing because of crash. Great show and insight. You guys inspire me. Lone Star, you inspire us.
What do you say? Soft landing and then a crash?
Soft landing because of crash. I don't know. And he launched his own podcast.
Well, appreciate you.
boosted the
Thanks for the support. Soft landing is not going to happen. Stay humble, stack sats. Bitcoin fixes this. Fix the money, fix the world. Gradually, then suddenly. Carlos, you're asking if you zap the RHR Noster profile, will it get a split and all of that? Yeah, I mean, if you send a boostagram, it auto gets split. And then if you send it through Noster, like we're manually splitting it, but we appreciate the support regardless.
Agreed. Moving on to software updates, as is typical. Stop me if you want to talk about anything in particular. First up, we got Lib Floresta, a lightweight Bitcoin full node library. Has been released, launched. So go check that out. Samurai Wallet version 0.99.98H has been released. Comes with new tools, JoinBot promotion, stability, and bug fixes. Did we talk about the swaps? Is that in here?
So JoinBot is this. So right now in Samurai, you can do by default when you make a transaction on a Samurai, they do something called a Stonewall transaction, which makes it look like a two-person CoinJoin transaction, even though it's just your own transaction. Then they have something called Stonewall 2X, where you actually do a two-person CoinJoin transaction. So it's like me and Marty decide to do a collaborative send together, and we both send at the same time through their UI. Those two transaction types look the same on chain. And then they added this concept of JoinBot, which is that Stonewall 2X, that real two-person CoinJoin. But instead of it being me and Marty, it's one of us doing it with Samurai's bot. So you get no privacy from Samurai in that situation. But on chain, it's a 2 of 2. It's a two-person CoinJoin with Samurai as the alternative. They've been running JoinBot in the app for a bit now. When they say JoinBot got promoted, they don't mean that the AI got a salary raise. What they mean is now it's front and center in the UI instead of hidden behind advanced settings while they were testing it out.
Hell yeah. And then on top of that, keeping with Samurai updates, really not officially associated with Samurai, but part of the Samurai ecosystem, Ronin UI version 2.2.0 has been released, got new features and improvements. And then Ronin Dojo, which is a full node setup that allows you to connect to Whirlpool easily and run your own Dojo node. Version 2.0.1 has been released. Static Wire, you can rent internet protocol subnets using Bitcoin's Lightning Network. That seems pretty cool. Is that VPN-like service?
I have no idea.
Okay. Add fart noise here. Allows for completely automated machine-to-machine negotiation of payments and IP address delivery. In order to keep the internet decentralized, Static Wire aims to be a standard protocol that anyone who has spare IP addresses can subrent them. So I guess that could more distributed VPN.
I don't know. I have to look into it. I probably should have just blindly put it on the list. That's on me.
Liana version 1.1 has been released. They patched something up. There was a bug, right?
There wasn't a bug. It was just some signing devices stopped working.
Okay.
So you couldn't sign, which could scare the shit out of people. But if you just took a deep breath, you still have the keys and everything was going to be okay.
You're good. Liana patched it up. Version 1.1. If you're running a later version, probably want to upgrade that.
I will say that I tested out Liana, and it's promising. It's not quite there yet, but it's promising.
It's pretty. Court Lightning version 23.08 RC1 has been released. It comes with experimental anchors, splicing. Core Lightning getting splicing out pretty quickly after async and Renee Pay.
What is Renee Pay?
I imagine has to do something Renee. Renee Pickard.
I think that stands to reason that is the case.
We're especially interested in your experiences with new experimental features, experimental anchor, experimental splicing, and Renee Pay. I don't know what Renee Pay is.
I love how the excerpt says introduction of Renee Pay developed by Eduardo and Renee. At least we know Eduardo was involved.
Start OS version 0.3.4.4 has been released. Comes with UI improvements and bug fixes. Primal Android version 0.14.3 has been released. Web client added relay management, which is pretty big. So primal.net can also download their apps on the iPhone and Android devices.
I'm gonna interject.
What?
I'm going to interject. You told me to interrupt when I want to interject.
Interject.
Primal.net is web client, Nostr web client. If you don't know how to sign in, it's because you need the Albi extension or the NoS2X extension, an extension that holds your Nostr private key, because Milan and the Primal team don't want you to just put your private key into a web browser. I guess you're still kind of doing that, but you're putting in an extension. It's a little bit better. But for the longest time, they didn't have, they respected your relays. So there's a concept in Nostr where you have relays, which are these independent servers that anyone can run, including yourself. And that's where you're sending your posts to. And so every Nostr user gets to choose which relays they want to use. If depending on the Nostr client you use, it will default to certain relays. Like if you use Damus, like it'll automatically connect you to the Damus relay. And Primal just like by default, just like respected whatever relays you had already had set. If you signed into Primal after creating your account, now they have a proper relay menu on the web app where you can edit that, which is great. It means that if you like using Primal's web app like I do, you don't have to go into a separate app if you want to update your relays. On the Android app side, big Android app release today. And what I'm really excited about with Primal is that Android is a first-class citizen in Primal. So it's not like they're building out the iPhone app and then they're porting it over to Android. They have two distinct teams within Primal that are building out. One team is building out the iPhone app. One team is building the Android app. One team is building out the web app. And as a result, the Android app is starting to see rapid development. And I'm pretty sure that because the Apple ecosystem is so fucking cucked, it's probably only a matter of months before the iOS client is probably it's going to be one of the best iOS clients available, but it will be worse and less powerful than the Android client. And as a longtime Android user, I am looking forward to holding that over my iPhone compatriots. So I'm just kind of prefacing that. I'm excited to brag about the additional features I have on Primal Android that aren't on iOS, even though that doesn't happen yet. That doesn't exist yet.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Okay, and I'm going to brag about it. And I'm going to shout myself out too.
You should. You deserve to. Moving on, talking about Android Primal clients, Amethyst version 0.72.1 has been released. They have new memory management and caching improvements.
So this is the number one client on Android right now, Amethyst. I don't think they have an iPhone client.
No, they're purely Android.
So I did the same thing that I did last week, and this is just what we're going to do going forward. The first half of software updates are Bitcoin. The second half are Nostr, and anything that falls in between, because a lot of Bitcoin apps will include Nostr and vice versa, goes in the middle.
Yeah. Snort web client for Nostr version 0.1.12 has been released. They have NSEC bunker support, so I assume this is private key management.
Correct. The idea of NSEC bunker is that you keep your private key there, and then all these apps use it rather than you inputting it into every fucking app and getting rugged eventually.
Yeah. Moving along, Stacker news adds Nostr login, Zap metadata, and more. From there, Vault, a free and open source Nostr password manager, has been released. Graphene OS version 202.308.07.00 has been released. They have an August security patch.
So when I first put this on the list, Marty,
It's the date.
I X'd out VS. I X'd out the version number, and I was just like August security patch. Like that's all people need to know. And then I was like, I'm gonna put it back in. Maybe Marty will read it, and you read it. So.
I read it. You know
Shout out to
me. I'm Ron Burgundy. Pablo, I think he's referencing Vault. It's self-hosted and MIT licensed.
No, he's referencing NSEC Bunker.
NSEC Bunker. Excuse me.
You can self-host it. It does remote signing, and it's MIT licensed, and it's another Pablo project.
Pablo, do you have too many projects? Do you have a problem? Do we need to sit you down?
No, Pablo, you don't have enough projects. Improve, do better.
This is really cool to see. Bitrefill partners with eSIM. Go to offer eSIMs in over 160 countries. So eSIMs is something we've talked about quite a bit over the years on this show. And Bitrefill being one of the most important projects in the world of enabling people to live on a Bitcoin standard, has partnered with eSIM Go to give their customers the ability to get eSIMs on the go.
With no KYC.
No KYC, yes.
Where you can pay with Binance Pay. Or Bitcoin. No, I mean, this is great. I think eSIMs offer some really cool advantages to the privacy focused out there. It's just another tool in the toolbox. Anyone who's been trying to get prepaid, no KYC phone numbers and data access, right, which is what a SIM provides, depending on where you are in the world, have noticed that it's gotten significantly more difficult. eSIMs are probably, like, if you like net it out, like, might be a little bit more dystopian than regular SIM cards, but they do offer you the advantage that you can essentially just download it through the internet, rather than actually getting a physical card, which all of a sudden opens up the situation where you go and buy a brand new Pixel with cash, or an iPhone if that suits you, and then you go to like Silent Link or Bitrefill and you buy an eSIM with Bitcoin, and it's not tied to your identity, and you just download it right to your phone. So it does give a lot of new options to people, and it's good to see Bitrefill going this route. I mean, Bitrefill, a key part of their business is not only selling gift cards, but also selling airtime and minutes for these phones. I mean, I have in the past went out and bought a SIM with prepaid cash, and then when it comes time to add minutes to it or add data to it, Bitrefill is often the easiest. So it makes sense that they would go further and offer this essentially full stack product, right? You get a new iPhone, download the eSIM, and then add minutes to it after the fact.
Yep. Shout out to Bitrefill, Sergey and team. Crushing it. You mentioned Binance Pay. Binance has become the first fully licensed exchange in El Salvador. Still wouldn't use Binance.
The reason for the freaks that aren't aware is I had Sergey, CEO and founder of Bitrefill, on Scylla Dispatch, and when he went through the top payment methods on Bitrefill, it was, I think, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Binance Pay were all tied, or more or less tied. They were very close, and then there was a massive drop off. And Binance Pay is this centralized. It's not even a shitcoin. It's like this centralized API scheme that Binance has for Binance users to pay people.
It's like PayPal almost.
Yeah, right.
So this is a trend, though. I mean, we saw Jack Mallers from Strike announce at Bitcoin 2023 that they are going to be setting up a headquarters in El Salvador. Fold has announced that as well. So it does seem like from a corporate entity perspective, there are many companies in the space that are beginning to domicile in El Salvador, at least set up headquarters in El Salvador.
Well, I think it's more important when you look at the developing world. Binance is the evil empire. Binance is fucking dominating in Africa and Latin America. So it's incredibly notable from that point of view. Like if you're talking about using Bitcoin, if you're talking about getting Bitcoin in the hands of people in the developing world, the number one actor that is pushing against that, ironically, is Binance. They're pushing you into their ecosystem. They want you in their centralized shit. They want you using BNB. They want you using Binance Smart Chain. They want you using every shitcoin that they have available. They want you getting yield and stake and all that shit. And they're basically on the ground with billions of dollars all throughout the developing world, slowing down Bitcoin adoption and slowing down people's access to true freedom tech tools. And I think people don't really appreciate that. I think people don't really understand the scale, the true scale of Binance globally.
It's massive. It's the largest exchange in the world.
By far. Like not even fucking
By
close.
far. Yeah.
Yeah.
So beware. Let's see, we're almost done the list. In the mining world, Core Scientific restructured. They released a restructuring plan, which includes equity stake for Bitmain and Anchorage. And I think Core Scientific is making out like bandits here.
Really?
Yeah. I think they handled this restructuring pretty well. I think they've got massive amounts of hash rate. And I think once they get out of this restructuring, which is, I believe, estimated to be next month, they're going to be rip roaring. 27,000 XPs added to their fleet.
I mean, to me, this deal seems like it's like everybody wins. They were both incredibly overexposed. All three were incredibly overexposed, right? And they're just trying to make the best of a shitty situation.
Yeah. That's why, I think if anybody was the most exposed, it was probably CoreSci. And the fact that they're getting out relatively unscathed outside of equity dilution is pretty big for them.
Well, I mean, like, what's the argument, right? It's like Bitmain like looks over like what the situation is, or Anchorage looks over what the situation is, right? And Anchorage is like, okay, you owe us $29 million in loans. It's like you can't, like, you clearly can't pay us back right now, but you could pay us back in a bull market. So we'll take the equity, and then we'll essentially get paid back when the bull market happens.
Yeah, I think one of the conditions of bankruptcy proceedings is that the company isn't allowed to expand operations while they're going through proceedings. And so I think when you consider the amount of hash rate that CoreSci has online producing revenue profitably, I believe right now, the fact that they're going to get out of this, they've got 27,000 machines from Bitmain, XPs, top of the line, that they'll be plugging in, adding to that revenue 7 months before, 8 months before that, 7 months before the halving. Again, I think CoreSci made out pretty well in this restructuring. And like you mentioned, as a product of their creditors had no other options. It's like, what else are we going to do? Like, yeah, all right, let's get this done and get you back up and running.
Dude, people are such fucking idiots. There was like, do you think we're past the point where, like, next cycle, are we going to see massive loans with ASICs as collateral?
I think if we do, they will be part of a collateral mix. I don't think you'll be seeing loans that are purely collateralized with ASICs.
I wonder. I mean, because people are fucking idiots, right? And like PayPal's offering yield, and it's like the next cycle is going to be like maybe just like a tint of, you know, there'll be resemblances to the previous cycle. Like, are people going to give loans collateralized by Twitter ad revenue share? Are we going to securitize Twitter ad flow?
Soulbound. They're going to add Soulbound tokens. So they are going to add crypto.
Ontario pensions. If you're listening and you run the Ontario pension plan and you invested in FTX and shit and got rugged all over, consider securitizing influencers, ad flow, and just pouring a ton of your pension money into it. I think that's a great idea. I think you really can't go wrong with it. I don't really see any downsides.
We're running an SVP for this, so if anybody wants to get in, reach out.
We're Bluecheck, AAA Bluecheck, securitized ad revenue, social credit score loans.
Yeah, we've audited all the Bluechecks. We know who's got the real engagement, not bot engagement. We are the Moody's of the Bluecheck rating industry. So come to us. We know what we're doing.
I just want to give a huge shout out to Matt and Marty for this.
Yeah, shout out to us. We're gonna help you.
I do wonder, I think there will still be ASIC collateralized loans. I think the smarter people will have better terms and whatnot, but people are idiots.
I mean, the lesson. All right, let's run with that assumption. What needs to happen to make that assumption possible? You have to have a very well-capitalized entity that also has access to mining infrastructure, whether it be via hosting agreements or just owning it outright. And so compare it to like a Bitcoin collateralized loan, like ASICs and Bitcoin, the asset, are both very volatile. Bitcoin, the token, is obviously better collateral because it's extremely liquid. You can liquidate it via trading desk and OTC desk immediately once your margin calls are hit. Compare that to an ASIC. It's a physical device, not so easy to liquidate or guarantee cash flow from those machines if they're not plugged in. So that's the big hurdle. If ASIC collateralized loans are to return, I think that's what the lending side of this equation learned during the last cycle, is that yes, Bitcoin's very good collateral, but ASICs are not, because they're physical and they need to be plugged in if you want that collateral to be working for you when you take it in kind when a loan goes bust.
Yeah, ASICs are fucking horrible collateral, and Bitcoin's amazing collateral. So just don't do that.
Yeah,
but
if they do come back, it would be blended collateral mix, I would imagine. Maybe they play like a 10% tranche of the collateral mix.
I think next bear cycle, a lot of people in the mining world are going to get wrecked again.
No, well, this happens in the bull cycle because people get all bulled up, get all horny. They're like, yeah, fuck it.
No, but they don't get wrecked until the bull ends. Yeah.
Well, you really get wrecked when you engage in that in the first place.
Yeah, but they don't realize they're wrecked yet.
No,
they usually have a couple months of thinking they're geniuses.
Yeah.
People tend to like, the question is like, how fucking crazy does the next bull market get? And people just lose their marbles. Like, people will just go out there, they'll just go all caps, they'll say 200K by conference day, they'll do like crazy fucking shit in the middle of the bull market, and then when everything gets fucking rugged, you see who's standing there naked and who's not standing there naked. Like, people do crazy fucking shit at the top of the bull. And like, if this is a BlackRock fueled bull market, like, who the fuck knows how crazy? Like, I'm already tired. I'm preemptively exhausted by the top of the next bull market. And I just want to preemptively both shout out myself and apologize for my behavior ahead of time.
Well, you can see how this, now let's play, like how the epic ASIC collateralized loan blows up is like, we have such a rip roaring bull market that people, like, say we hit like 150 and people take out ASIC collateralized loans. And then we run to 300 and they take some of that collateral off the table or lock in or pay off some of the loan, take that off. They get emboldened. We run to 500. They begin taking out more loans. And then we had some peak. And people are like, oh no, it worked, like on the way up here. And they get absolutely wrecked.
They would, like, at the top, like, Sailor was like, mortgage your house, put it in Bitcoin. Now you're homeless.
Yeah, beware. Stay humble, stack sats. One more thing that I want to pull up. Logan, pull up that tweet about WeWork. I think it's a really interesting development and something we should expect more of. So WeWork bonds are yielding almost 90%, which means those corporate bonds are dog shit. And this is just a trend. I wanted to highlight this as a trend to pay attention to. It seems like with the Fed hikes, all the zombie unicorns, all the zombie companies that exist out there in the public markets that have been issuing corporate debt are extremely exposed right now. Like, it seems like WeWork could potentially go under because of this. So something to pay attention to moving forward is the Fed rate hikes effect on corporate bond markets. All the zombie companies are going to be put in pretty precarious situations. So keep an eye on that.
Apparently, for some people, me just outwardly saying I'm sorry for some of my price predictions and then tweeting out stay humble stack sats every morning for 279 days isn't enough repenting for my price predictions last bull market. And to you, I kindly say, fuck you. Have we considered what have we considered so to be clear, if you loan money to WeWork right now, you get 90% annually?
Yeah, I mean, if they can produce the revenues to actually pay back those bondholders.
And that sounds like easy money. Like, are we just going to lend the whole stack to WeWork and get 90? That sounds like great yield, Marty.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do
Have
it.
you considered it? That's crazy.
Ape and Freaks reaction. We've got the Bluecheck revenue product that we're going to put out, SVP or SPV. Excuse me.
That's why Marty hit his Bluecheck, so he can still get that ad revenue.
We actually got a high yield corporate debt SPV that we're doing too. So we're going to go find all these 90% yielding corporate bonds and ape into them.
So correct me if I'm wrong. As that rate goes up on the private bonds, the likelihood of them going bankrupt also goes up, right? It's the market saying you're more likely to go bankrupt because this is why you have to borrow money at such a high rate, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And to be clear, we are not raising money for these SPVs. I think we have to clarify that for SEC reasons. It's a joke.
We are not securitizing Bluechecks. I mean, Marty had the mark of the beast himself like a week ago, so we're not. What?
I feel lighter.
Right? Welcome to the resistance. Told you.
Yeah. It's a great rip.
People are saying I'm too like I have like top of the line fucking lights over here. That's why I'm white as fuck right now. People are like skin tone shaming me.
I'm tan as fuck right now, so it's the juxtaposition.
But I also have like 1 sec. Oh shit. I'm gonna break.
I told you need to get the ones with the different shades.
The two of you are just tomato and mozzarella.
Look at that now. See? This is the first time I've ever had really professional lighting.
Oh, let's give a shout out to Vake for getting a pump in today. Vake wrote, "Holy shit, I started watching 2 hours ago, went to the gym, just got back, and you guys are still streaming." Vake, congrats on your pump, bro.
We should just end we should
talk about Bitcoin pumps.
Recap. Like, why do we even still do it anymore?
No, well, actually, one thing I wanted to say. So this is if we go into another bull market. It's gonna be my fourth. I'm really mentally preparing, like, to not let the caps Odell and me take over. Have you put caps Odell? Have you buried him? Is he gone forever?
No. I preemptively apologized. And also shouted myself out. No, I'm going to completely lose my cool this next cycle. But I really do believe, like, we've mostly said everything we need to say. And now Rabbit Hole Recap is just like we just get on there, just shoot the shit with the ride or die freaks. Because we're already all in Bitcoin. Like, raise your hand if you're all in Bitcoin. Wow. Majority of the crowd. We're already all in Bitcoin. We're already staying humble and stacking sats. We're already trying to increase our cash flow as much as possible to accumulate as many sats as possible. We're already trying to use the tools, trying to support open source development. Like, what else is there to do? Like, we've nailed all the specific. Like, at this point, we're just fucking around until we can say "told you so," and then we'll apologize, and then we'll fuck around, and then we'll say "told you so" again, and then we'll apologize, and then we'll fuck around, say "told you so" again, and then Bitcoin's the standard of the world, and then we're all.
I take offense to that. I like to think we're dynamic. We evolve. We move with the times. We've got Noster to keep pushing forward. We've really got to train the AIs that are going to run this podcast in the next year. So we need to get as much audio out there as possible.
Yeah, I think it's out there already.
People freaking out about drive chains. I wouldn't worry about it too much personally.
Paul Sports is attacking your money. I think it's interesting that he thinks.
Yeah.
No, Paul was saying that he thinks miners will just inevitably
Miner activated soft fork,
and then we have to hard fork to get it out.
I don't see that being the case.
I don't really follow that, but
I don't think there is demand for drive chains the way it's being portrayed.
There's no demand for. No one needs shit coins on Bitcoin. It's like fucking stable coins on Lightning. Once again, I don't think. I do wonder sometimes how necessary rabbit hole recap is every week. I just feel like we're just shooting the shit. Like the fundamentals, the fundamentals are clear. At this point, we're just repeating ourselves all the time.
Well, there's new people coming in. The show's growing.
Everyone wants to fight each other in bear markets. And it mostly does not fucking matter. And if when it comes time to like truly actually fight over Bitcoin, it'll be very obvious. But until that point, use your own node, hold your own keys, don't blindly update your node, because updates can be malicious. And stay humble and stack sats, and just fucking chill out and get your priorities in order.
It's good advice. We'll be back next week to give you the same exact advice. Peace and love, freaks.